genre of Fandango, and especially talking about tonality and giving two examples of genres that were influenced by the Fandango. And we're very fortunate because there'll be a second Fandango presentation later on today with Dr. Mahugo. So I'd like to start out just by playing something. And so this is an anonymous Fandango. So I'm going to have to walk a little bit. This is an anonymous Fandango that was found in a notebook in 1803. And the notebook was titled Various Pieces for the Little Girl Maria Josefa. And this is from Guatemala. So we don't know if it was written there or if it might have been taken there. But I wanted to begin with a Fandango that comes to us through a Latin American providence, because we believe that the Fandango originated in Latin America, and I will also be tracing it back to Latin America by the end of the presentation. So I will be just playing some short excerpts today, and Fandangos traditionally have many short repeats, and to show you a little more figuration, I will be cutting out some repeats, so I apologize for this. This one is the very typical set of mesmerizing variations on an ostinato bass line. You can notice here we do have one hand in 3/4 and the other in 6/8. I'll play a little of the beginning, then skip to the end, and you'll see it modulates to F major, and then of course notice the last chord. And it represents a form of dual tonicity emerging from traditions of modal harmony. He is referring to Andalusian or Phrygian tonality, which evolved through the confluence of Gregorian modality, European common practice harmony, and the musical legacy of the Moors, who ruled Andalusia for over 750 years. Like traditional Arab music today, Moorish music was grounded in modes. And two of the most important you can see on the screen there. The scales of these modes, taking E as tonic, are written, and importantly, I'd like you to notice how the 4-scale degree A is able to function as a secondary tonic and a stable resting pitch. So the most basic chord progression ends up being A minor, G major, So we might not want to think of this in Western terms as 1, flat 7, major 6, major 5, but rather as 4, major 3, major 2, and major 1. Flamenco musicians today refer to this as progression as the Andalusian cadence. So throughout Spain and Latin America, in the late 17th and 18th centuries, the term Fandango was applied to any sensual, lively dance with music accompaniment. Generally, the traditional Andalusian Fandango has 2 parts. It alternates sung verses, coplas, accompanied by 1, 4, 5 harmony with instrumental instrumental interludes, the paseos, consisting of reiterated and ornamented 4-3-2-1 progressions. Simple, common practice tonality is thus employed in the verses and the Andalusian modal harmony in the ritornello, with an F triad that serves as the modulatory pivot point. This was a couple, often a couple's dance. You can see them there, accompanied by guitar or vihuela and castanets or palmas, so hand clapping. The meter was originally notated in 6/8, but later on in 3/8 and 3/4, and I found many examples with the two superimposed. By the late 18th century, a courtly version of the fandango had become fashionable among the aristocracy as well as in stage works of all kind, and this is the category in which most of the keyboard fandangos fall. So there are various suggestions about the origins, but the two prevailing theories are that it was a West Indian Caribbean origin or an Afro-Latin origin. The church denounced as vulgar dances like the fandango, and there's many travel accounts from the 18th and 19th centuries that were highly critical of the dance because it was so overtly sensual. But the Spanish public and really the rest of Europe was infatuated. The stylized and elaborate form of the fandango oscillated for the most part between two chords. So the A minor chord and the E major, as I described, or really what became more common was D minor and A major. Keyboard fandangos retain a loose, improvisatory, non-teleological character, and examples which are more firmly ensconced in the Western tradition might conclude on a tonic type of minor key chord. So there is a general absence of the copla-like passages that made up the core of the traditional Andalusian fandango. But some of the keyboard fandangos, like that of Felix Maximo Lopez, do contain a couplet-type passage with this 1-4-5 harmony, often in F. So I wanted to play just a little bit of this one for you. So he was a contemporary of the Spanish painter Goya, and one of the most famous musicians of his time. This piece is built on an ostinato bass line that is a foundation for a set of variations, and they are abruptly interrupted by a movement to F. So I'll go a little bit past the F major second. Just so you can hear the ending. So the ambiguity of the tonicity is a big question. The Spanish musicologist Berlanga Fernandez states that the pieces cannot pieces, and they really aren't. So according to Peter Manuel in Fandangos, the simple Western polarities of tonic and dominant do not apply, nor does the strict Phrygian tonality that I described. He sees that them as having two chords with their own sort of strength and stability, with the A major by convention being slightly more conclusive and stable. And these ostinatos are best seen as swinging pendulum-like between the two competing tonal centers. So the next one I wanted to show you a little bit is by Francisco Díaz. And very little is known about the composer, but according to analysis of the paper, it was probably written around 1795. There is a modulation to the relative major F, which, along with the indication subida, there we go, you can see that there, which means a totally different musical phrase that speeds up the tempo and therefore the steps. So I wanted to just play a little of the beginning, and then I will skip forward so you can hear how the steps might change with the tempo there. Intensity and speed till we got to the top of the page there. Fandangos, I was reading the program notes of Andreas Steyer, and he writes, all the Fandangos in the Spanish libraries are in D minor. And so to the program, he suggests adding a little variety if we were not to rival the art of fugue in terms of tonal monochromaticism. So I'm happy to say I did find Fandangos that are based on other keys than A and D. And I have time to share one of them for you, which is based on alternating A minor and E major chords. So this is by an English-American composer, Benjamin Carr, and this Fandango was published in 1809 in Philadelphia. It's very different in feel than the other ones I have showed you. So this is the Fandango in the form of a rondo. And I'll just play the opening section of the rondo. But you can hear the alteration of the A minor and the E major. that is based on C minor, and G major. But it also has a subdominant there that you can see outlined in the left-hand ostinato pattern of an F chord, F minor. So you can see we have the hemiola with, in many parts, 3/4 in one hand and 6/8 in the other. So in a sense, similar to the opening fandango from Guatemala. And this is very much a series of variations on this bass line. It is very fun to play because it has so many repeated notes. So I'll do a little bit of this one. And I'm sorry, my pedal is not working. There we go. Which is a very modern example of this. In Latin America, there are many similar genres that oscillate between a minor chord and its apparent dominant, although they will often include an intermediate subdominant chord, sort of like how you heard there. And these could be in the major or the minor mode. So this brings us to Mexico. In Veracruz, in the region of La Huasteca, along the eastern Gulf, it was the closest port to Spain. Their Fandango and Spanish musical traditions had an impact on regional traditional music such as the Veracruz Huapango, where pre-Hispanic indigenous music, African musical elements, and Spanish tradition combined to create a very vibrant culture known as son huasteco, of which Huapango is a prominent style in the genre. So it is a dance on a wooden platform where dancers perform intricate rhythmic footwork known as the pateado. So these rhythms from their feet substituted for the castanets and percussion in the Andalusian fandango. Brenda M. Romero writes, in a Huapango, lyrics were sung, often humorous or playful, but they had double meanings and often involved criticisms of politics or the church. So we have a very complex rhythmic structure that mixes duple and triple meters to reflect the intricate steps of the dance. So this one should, yeah, you can sort of see her dance, her steps she's doing. I have a Huapango to share with you. This is by Paul Frederick Bowles, who was an American expatriate, composer, author, translator, and ethnomusicologist. This Huapango contains actual folk material, and perhaps you can listen for the metric changes, the hemiola, and the repeated 1, 4, and 5 harmonies in the major mode. Traditionally, these will mostly alternate 3, 4, and 6, 8, but this particular example I have alternates 5, 8, and 6, 8. So this piece, as well as the last one I have for you, was written for piano, but I hope you'll indulge me as I play it on the harpsichord because I think it really shows the direct connection to the fandango, and I also think it works quite well on the instrument. This one is quite short, so I can play the whole thing for you. The Joropo originated in the Llanos region in the 18th century with African, European, and Indigenous influences, similar to what we saw in Mexico. In 1882, the Joropo became Venezuela's national music, and they began to use the word Joropo instead of Fandango. So I have a very brief clip of them dancing this. You can see it's very fast. This work is by Moleiro, and he was a Venezuelan pianist and composer. This is one of his most famous works, and it is a piano version of Venezuela's folkloric music. Like the Fandango, it alternates D minor and A major, and there's a modulation to an F major section. So you can notice it has the same superposition between ternary and binary pulse that we found in the Huapango, but as is traditional, the pulse is almost twice as fast. So this is definitely party music, so I'll finish off with this, and thank you very much for listening. It's a wonderful set by Antoni Pons Seguí from Ars Hispana, and it's 4 volumes of them, so it's kind of a really great way to find them. Many of them are I think are very difficult, and my students probably couldn't play them. Oh yes, go ahead.
What are the cultural settings when these are played? Was it just family gatherings, or were there big concerts? Rarely big concerts.
That is a good question. I would say parties. In the court settings, I don't know that these were as much of a type of recreational music making. Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, when I hear this in the Phrygian case, so that all this reminds me of flamenco, of course, and I'm wondering if you talk about this being sort of not that idiomatic sometimes. I'm wondering if the guitar has an influence here, because it's the instrument, of course, for flamenco.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was the instrument that was, or vihuela.
Yeah. Vihuela.
Yes. So then I think the court composers wanted to bring it to these, to their patrons in the parties and the social gatherings that the upper class would have. And so, yes, I would say that the guitar and those instruments had a huge impact on the form. I think everyone might be ready to try out the instruments or get some lunch.
Okay, and hope to see you at lunch or certainly the next session.